Hello dear Motorsport-Magazin friends and Formula One fans. On this historic day, the list of three-time Formula One world champions, it has grown by one name: Max Verstappen, Brabham, Stewart, Lauda, Senna, Piquet, and now Max. A historic day that was foreseeable, quite clearly, because it was relatively clear that he would succeed here on this sprint Saturday. Max Verstappen didn't even need the second place, he clinched here. Sergio Perez retired, so it was already clear ahead of time that Verstappen was world champion, and you simply have to say hats off to this performance. Logically, it's been a long time coming. It's really only about the records, but it really is an absolutely incredible season that has been crowned here. But you can see for yourselves, I'm now right in front of the Red Bull hospitality. The celebrations, well, of course I don't want to be too negative, but maybe the saddest world championship celebration in Formula One history. Because tomorrow there will also be the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen has made it clear that he's determined to win that one too. He also wants to win the last races of the season. There are still 5 races to go. Nevertheless, there was a World Championship press conference with Max Verstappen afterwards. He said that this was his best title to date. There are now 3. Why was this his best? Because the standards of driving and of the car, of course, have become unbelievable. This consistency, that, he says himself, was the best thing they've delivered so far. An interesting side fact, by the way, is that he already has 2 World Championship trophies at home. These are replicas, of course. The real one is a traveling trophy, but he has one next to his simulator, the other one next to his TV. I'm curious to see where the 3rd trophy will go. The really big records, while he is realistic enough, depends on many factors. Of course, in Formula One it depends on the car he will be driving. Then on top of that, he also says he doesn't even know how long he'll be doing this. He has already announced that many times. So I can imagine that Max Verstappen won't be a driver like Fernando Alonso, who will run around in the Formula One paddock until his old age. So we'll just have to wait and see about that. He says himself that he is living the moment, which I thought was a nice statement today. In fact, there's not much more we can say about this World Championship title. We've already talked about it so much, and we've also written about it in our new print edition, issue number 93. I think the cover does justice to the occasion. I think it's beautiful. I'm looking forward to your comments on what you think. If you want the whole thing at home, it's really nice to have in hand. Below in the video description is the link to it. The big story besides the world title, it actually existed before there was any real action here. Out of the blue the title didn't come, but out of the blue came the news that there were tire problems. I was actually sitting alone with the Pirelli colleague because no one was interested in talking about tires late in the evening on Friday. At that time, however, it was not yet foreseeable what came about this morning. Pirelli analyzed the tires after the practice sessions and found problems. This is a normal procedure. They always look to see if you find any damage, and they actually saw under the microscope that the surface has come off a bit on the shoulder, so on the sidewall. This seems familiar. We've had these problems before in the year 2021. There was tire damage in the race. They did not want to let it come so far here. They just analyzed the tires and saw that there were problems. Where do these problems come from? It's a very interesting topic because the Kerbs are associated with it. There have been 2 changes since 2021. In 2021 there was a double row of Kerbs, the first row with 25mm Kerbs, the second with 50mm Kerbs, and now many are complaining about the edges. It has to be said that these are standard Kerbs that have been installed. We discussed this a lot at the beginning of the weekend about floors and so on. Now it's the tires, but they are simply standard Kerbs. The so-called Misano Kerbs, because they were used there for the first time. 50 centimeters difference in height, that's nothing special. So why is it still a problem here? Well, because the track layout tempts the drivers to drive over the Kerbs for a long time and at a particularly high speed. Mario Isola, who held a special press conference today, said that it's like hitting the sidewall 100 times with a hammer. And then it's the frequencies that are the problem, which then ensure that you see these microscopic damages and you simply don't want to take the risk. That's why unique measures were taken. The track was narrowed by 80 centimeters in turns 12 and 13, and the track boundary was moved inward to prevent the Kerbs from being driven over at the high point. This has of course changed the track, and the FIA did give the drivers 10 minutes of extra practice time before the sprint shootout. The hope is that this will improve the whole thing, but they will still have to carry out analyses late into the night, and if they see that there's no improvement with the track changes, then there will be changes for the race. The FIA will then introduce a mandatory 3-stop strategy, a maximum running time of the tyres of 20 laps. Unless the tyres were already mounted for an in-lap and out-lap, then you can use them for 22 laps. Now, one or the other says that the race lasts 57 laps. If I have 20 or 22 laps maximum running time, why then 3 stops? 2 would actually be enough, but you also want to prevent everyone from pitting on the same lap. You want to prevent everyone from utilizing the exact same strategy. That's why they say 3 stops, even if 2 would actually do. What's important at this point is that they know all about this from previous race weekends, where they also adjusted the tire pressure a bit when they saw that the load was too high. That's not the solution here. It's not a fatigue fracture as far as the structure of the tire is concerned. On the contrary, if you were to increase the tire pressure now, you would possibly even aggravate the problem, because the sidewall would then be stiffer and the load would then be even higher on the corresponding area. They have actually even considered whether to lower the pressure, then you would let some load off the corresponding spot. But then you would have the problem with standing waves, and then you might actually have fatigue fractures in the carcass. So, it's pretty difficult. Drivers have complained especially about the communication, that they didn't hear anything before that. Then all of a sudden they heard about it from the media, supposedly. We didn't see it coming at all either, you have to say. But you probably have to take the FIA and Pirelli to task for simply going through with it. They found a pragmatic solution. Personally, I think something like this can happen. It shouldn't happen, of course. But it doesn't happen very often, and if the drivers and the teams had been involved, there would certainly have been some politics involved. Then there would have been lobbying about which solution to have. So it just looks a bit stupid, but in my opinion, it can happen, and nothing bad has happened on the track yet. A lot of politics on the side, but we saw a sensational sprint. Oscar Piastri won it. He pulled it off ice cold. A really great race with different strategies on soft and medium tires. We could talk so much today about this sprint race. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time. We really have to take our hats off to McLaren and Oscar Piastri for the way he pulled it off. I might have been able to recognize a Nokia moment. Max Verstappen wins his 3rd World Championship, but he gets beaten fair and square on the track. Why Nokia moment? Well, they were still celebrating record results when the iPhone was introduced and actually sealed the end. An era, you could say. Maybe it's not quite that dramatic, but it's a bit like that. Max Verstappen just finished in 2nd position. Of course, the safety car also helped a bit. 3 safety car deployments meant that you couldn't race that much. Lando Norris was in 3rd position, and behind him things were really busy. There were 3 safety cars, you might have to add. A collision involving Ocon, Hülkenberg and Perez. But no further action on that matter. I would think Ocon was at fault, but the steward said Perez was still there, and Ocon didn't see him. That's why, well, it was a struggle for him. Charles Leclerc, who received a 5-second penalty after the race, dropped from 7th to 12th position. Why? Track limits. And that brings us back to the troublesome topic. We saw a fantastic sprint race and then had the tiresome discussions again, but it was worse for me in the sprint shootout. We saw 22 deleted lap times in qualifying yesterday, and 31 deleted lap times in the sprint shootout, which is actually shorter. And I have to say, I kind of fell out of love with Formula 1 a little bit at that moment. I then fell in love again in the sprint, which was really great, but I was fuming during the sprint shootout. I didn't actually look at the world feed, at the picture. I only looked at the race control messages to see which lap times were being deleted, and I have to say quite honestly that I'm a bit disillusioned at this point. I can't blame the FIA, the tracks are to blame. And who builds the tracks? Well, the track operators. The FIA then actually just takes care of it, but we really need a strong Formula 1 to come along and say that if Qatar, if they pay so many millions and want Formula 1 so badly, then they should also build a proper track. So I hope that something will finally happen. It can't go on like this. I hope that things will go a bit better in the race, that the really big farce won't happen. Of course, you can find out all about it on our website. You'll also find out what's happening with the tires, whether there will be a 3-stop strategy or a mandatory one. I'm assuming there won't be too many tires for Pirelli to analyze today, because there were the safety cars. That's why I think they're playing it safe. But you can find out what will be decided on our website or in our free app for Android and iOS. As soon as a decision is made, you'll get a push notification on your phone.